Central Florida, and they're going to bring you the latest on the important races as the 2024 election comes to an end. I'm Bianca Smith.
I'm Alex Land. Let's see how the presidential race is looking right now. Here you can see that many states have called the race in favor of a candidate, with former President Donald Trump holding a lead over Vice President Kamala Harris.
Here we're taking a look at the map right here, and to Alachua County, who's going to prevail as they head to the sheriff's office. WUFT's Nicole Borman is live at the sheriff's office with Emery Gainey at the watch party with how the night is unfolding for the candidate.
It's been a really exciting night here at the Heartwood Soundstage. It's especially been exciting for Sheriff candidate Chad Scott, who joins me now, with seeing the current polling. How are you feeling about this race?
I feel real good about the race. Very challenging, but I like the outcome. We're ahead, 394 votes ahead. All it takes is one.
And it was a really tight race all night. So how are you feeling tonight leading up to this moment right now?
Of course, it was nail biting. You know, all candidates put in a lot of hard work, and it's just a testament of it. When you put in work, you compete. So and I think the competition was great, and I just came out ahead.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to tell our viewers tonight?
No, I just would like to say that I had a great team that worked with me. In spite of all the obstacles and all the negativity that was put out, we still merged to the top. So I think that anytime that you're competing and you encounter obstacles and you keep fighting, you win.
For sure. Well, we'll be live here all night from Heartwood Soundstage. For now, I'm Charlize Ramos reporting live, WUFT News.
We're going to go over some of the election results right now. Emery Gainey has 46% with 62,007 votes. Chad Scott has 46% with 62,460 votes. And Pamela Marshall has 6% with 8,459 votes. Our Rashonda Robinson is joining us live in the studio with a breakdown on the latest results on Amendment 4.
Yes, right now, it's yes in favor for the Amendment 4. This is one of the most contested issues on the ballot. With 57%, that's 5.9 million in favor, and 43% opposed. That's around 4.4 million voters. Live in the studio, Radaysha Robinson, WUFT News.
We are back here with Dr. Nathan Carpenter. So, Dr. Carpenter, I want to talk about youth voters' social media trends. A key factor of the Harris-Walz campaign has been celebrity endorsement, especially with this new age of social media. We have posts like Taylor Swift's that got millions of likes in a matter of hours. Do you think that this is actually impacting political opinion or voter turnout in any way?
Well, it can. So one of the things that we noticed when we were analyzing, especially the presidential debate, was actually that moment of the Taylor Swift endorsement. One of the things that we see across social media is that Donald Trump tends to just dominate conversation. I mean, whether people are for him or against him, he's often the center of that conversation. And so what we really saw that night was this interesting moment where there was a lot of discussion over, who won the debate and all of that. And again, Donald Trump's, we kind of look at these as like lines, the overall volume was really dominant until these 15 minutes, after that endorsement, where suddenly that narrative changed for a while. And it changed in terms of what we again call the overall sentiment of that conversation too. So I think these endorsements have the ability to be narrative changers at different moments. What we're seeing right now, though, especially late in the game, is again a lot of celebrities lining up to show support, either way. Maybe a little late in the game, depending on when early voting started, or depending on the relationship to the state where that endorsement's taking place. But we also then see this interesting phenomenon where endorsements can backfire, right? And so sometimes the endorsement of one. Especially a controversial person or a relationship with a controversial person. I'm thinking of like, Sean Diddy Combs, for example. Like who is he connected to? Sometimes those can really, really backfire. And so when we think about what kind of effect do they do, you're right. They can definitely increase turnout in terms of people wanting to be affiliated, but they can also have that reverse impact as well. That they may drive people away.
Interesting. Younger voters are increasingly getting their news from social media. How do algorithms come into play in these echo chambers of only receiving your opinion? Do you think it inhibits younger voters from being able to get both sides?
So algorithms are very interesting, and you mentioned this idea of, again, like a bubble, right? That you're only sitting there focused in on your own content. And what I find interesting is that there's kind of a thing that happens as well that's not just filter bubble, but also kind of the fractured nature of a lot of media. You know, who owns which stations or who owns which platforms. That can make a big difference. So one of the things that we're seeing right now, especially is X, or formerly known as Twitter. That ownership has changed a lot of what used to happen there. So it's no longer both sides. There's a lot of emphasis, especially coming from Elon Musk, that he wants his political endorsement to win. And so that changes things like the advertisements that are seen first. You know, no matter your following, you see those when you first log in. And so he has his preferred candidate, Trump at this point, showing up in almost everything when people first log in. And even the trends that are being displayed can be displayed in a way to favor candidates. I think what will be interesting is to see, again, you mentioned like the youth vote. You know, do we see the opposite happening in sites like TikTok? Which unfortunately here at the University of Florida we can't study, right? We've got a kind of a statewide ban on accessing that on our servers here. But from anecdotal evidence, we hear that, especially college-age TikTok users, we're seeing a lot more Democratic-based content. And some of that might even be broken down by different age ranges too. Or sorry, not age ranges, but genders. So for example, I think men were seeing more Trump-related content, and women were seeing more Harris-related content. And some of that was just based on, again, TikTok's overall algorithms and related content too. So it can absolutely determine what we do see in these spaces.
And finally, if you had to pick one issue that would impact tonight's election result, what would it be?
Oh goodness, one issue. I honestly think it's not a voting issue, but I think it is coming down to ownership of social media platforms. I think that's a very, very huge issue. And so from Meta, which is again Facebook and Instagram, owned by Mark Zuckerberg, somebody who's wanted to stay out of politics and to kind of play a neutral role, from Elon Musk taking over Twitter and really trying to set it up as a space for his own ideas and opinions and ideology. Those can have some incredible consequences for what people see.
Thank you, Dr. Carpenter.
Thank you.
Let's turn to WUFT reporter Tanya Fedak, who is live in Gainesville at a watch party for local Democrats. Tanya?
As the night continues to go on, people are starting to file out of the local Democratic watch party, but we've still got Cameron, Isana, and Sarissa here. So tell me, you guys, as the night's going on and these numbers are coming in, how are you feeling?
I'm definitely feeling nervous about the whole situation. I'm pretty anxious. I'm trying to stay hopeful, and the music's keeping the vibe going.
So tell me, you guys, as these results are coming in, we're starting to see decisions on certain amendments. When you guys were casting your ballot, what are some of the issues that stood out to you as the most important?
I mean, I think along with a lot of my generation, I was really passionate about Amendment 3 and 4. And although those didn't go our way, I'm still feeling hopeful about the rest.
I was really excited to vote for Debbie Mercasol-Powell, but it does not look like that she's going to win, unfortunately. So
I was looking at our amendments, and like Cam said, they didn't go our way, but I'm very glad that Chad Scott was elected sheriff.
All right, and we will keep you guys updated as more of those results continue to come in. Live from Gainesville, Tanya Fedak, WUFT News.
WUFT reporter Eva Garcia is live at a local GOP watch party at Happy Homes Incorporated with more on how the scene is. Eva?
Behind me at World of Beer, things are really starting to wrap up after Jen Garrett's loss. We were just able to talk to Florida Senate member Keith Perry, where he told us that he believes that Jen Garrett is one of the best candidates to come into Alachua County, and he will show his conditional support for her if she chooses to run again. Thank you. Back to you guys.
Florida's Amendment 3 to legalize recreational marijuana is predicted to fail. WUFT's Valentina Sandoval is here to give us a rundown of this issue on the ballot.
This amendment would have allowed the possession, purchase, and use of marijuana products and accessories for adults 21 and over. 93% of votes have been counted in the state. The measure failed to meet the 60% threshold to pass. Ultimately, 5.8 million voted in favor, 4.6 million voted against. Live in the studio, Valentina Sandoval, WFT News.
We go over now to Alachua County Supervisor of Elections Office, where WUFT reporter Bailey Korinek is live with updates on voter turnout. Bailey?
I'm Bailey Korinek, and I'm outside the Alachua County Supervisor of Elections Office, but of course we'll be giving you a glimpse nationally into those results that are trickling in now. Let's take a closer look at Pennsylvania, where Harris and Trump are neck and neck. I was just looking at my phone earlier, and the state is going from red to blue, red to blue. It's really teetering back and forth, and it may be a photo finish in that key battleground state. And as of now, polls in these battleground states are officially closed. So stay tuned. In the next hour, we'll be giving you those results live. In Alachua County, I'm Bailey Korinek.
I'm here with Dr. Grant. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
And I'm just ready to get into it. And I just wanted to ask you, what impacts do you think social justice movements have had on this particular election?
So I think if we're talking about social justice, we're talking about issues with Palestine and Israel. We're talking about issues between racism and police brutality. And so I think those issues are very key in not only understanding how people have differing viewpoints, but also understanding what side or what issues are people taking a stand in. We know that with the Palestine-Gaza situation, a lot of people decided they weren't going to vote at all. And so I think there's a stance of not exercising their right, but also a stance of seeing that maybe either one of these candidates actually appeal to relieving these justice issues in that way.
And when it comes to Black feminism, how could this help people understand the issues and the candidates in this election?
Well, I think the thing is, when we think about Black feminism, it's about the empowerment of understanding the unique experiences. So I mentioned previously, Kamala Harris being a Black woman is not just the fact that she's Black, but she's also a woman. She also has an experience of being from South Asian and South Asian descent. And all those things really encompass who she is, and also not only the power structure she has to overcome. And so I think one thing that not only just Black feminism, but the discrimination and misogynoir, as some scholars call it, that Black women face because of the hatred of discrimination that they exist in. And so understanding that feminism and intersectionality and Black feminism are inherently entwined around the experience.
So why do you think that this is the first time that we've seen a Black woman run for presidency? Why has it taken us so long?
Well, I mean, it has happened before. I would say we've had previous people attempt to run, but for Harris to make it to the major ticket, to make it this far, I think the bigger issue is, where are we in terms of how we view women in leadership? With Clinton, clearly we saw a woman try to run for president. With Barack Obama becoming the first Black male president, there's been gains, but always at every time with gains, there's always a step back. And so I think it's more of being primed around the issues. I think it's also being primed about the demographics and the individuals who are voters. I think Gen Z that's the reason she targeted that generation, because they are more focused on inclusion, social justice, social awareness, cultural empathy than maybe other populations and generations that have never had before.
How do you think Kamala was able to create such a connection with Gen Z?
I think, one of the things that people always talk about in terms of presidents, and there's been books about this, that people want presidents that are relatable. And so not so much, again, as a leader, but can this person be somebody I could hang out with? Sometimes the joke is like, is this person that the common man or the person to have a beer with? I think for Gen Z, it's like, do you understand what's important to me? Do you understand my trends? Do you understand my pop culture references? Do you understand how my life around TikTok and memes are associated? And Harris really capitalized on that understanding. Just like Obama, being on SNL the week before the election, totally knowing to engage with social media and getting people to be trending and being out front and available.
So, touching on the fact that she was on SNL,
Yes.
I was like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. How do you think that affected her campaign or Donald Trump's campaign?
I think people want to see somebody who's relatable. I think her being able to poke fun at herself, and I mean, Maya Rudolph is by far probably the best person to play Kamala. Even when they were doing the little mirror scene, I think people thought while it was serious, it was funny because she was able to be relatable and not be like, this is a position of power, but I can also be fun and I can make jokes and I can be funny and I can engage with people on so many different platforms just besides being president.
And how do you think that race, gender, and class have affected the media coverage for this election?
I think it's affected it a lot. I think, as I mentioned before, like the conversations of different identities in this election has definitely been issue for it. Again, we have conversations around immigration and just the recent conversations of Puerto Rico and Haitians and the misinformation and stereotypes that have come out of those social sound bites, right? But also the conversations around abortion and women's rights and Roe versus Wade. And so those aspects are very key to people's identities, not only their identities, but their lived experiences, their existence within this country, and also larger conversations around how the U.S. fits in a global economy or a global understanding.
Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Grant, and we're going to take it back over to Alex.
Here at WUFT News, we like to keep all of our viewers informed, including our Spanish speakers. We go over to WUFT reporter Sofia Mendez with an update in Spanish.
Thank you, guys. Estamos de regreso con las actualizaciones de las elecciones de 2024. Tenemos más actualizaciones de los resultados de las elecciones por la presidencia de 2024. El candidato republicano Donald Trump lleva la delantera con 188 votos electorales, ganando estados como Florida, Texas, Kentucky y Missouri, mientras que la demócrata Kamala Harris lleva 99 votos electorales, ganando en estados como Nueva York e Illinois. En ámbito local, la carrera del alguacil del condado de Alachua continúa estrecha con 46% para Emery Gainey y Chad Scott. Esta es la información que tenemos hasta el momento. Manténgase informados a través de WFT.org/noticias. Gracias por habernos sintonizados en esta cobertura especial.
Over in Marion County, WUFT reporter Natasha Holt is live at the Supervisor of Elections office with an update on the local races. Natasha? Bernie?
Hello and good evening from Marion County Supervisor of Elections office. Last we reported to you the Supervisor of Elections office had closed, and that remains true. What was once a parking lot full with different cars from different precincts coming in with ballots to turn in the votes from people all across the county is now a barren desert. It's just us out here. And as we are lulled almost to sleep by the crickets, we still have some important information to give to you all. So, of course, as we reported, all precincts in Marion County have officially turned in their results. But I want to draw your attention to one eye-catching ballot measure that only appeared in one precinct, and the only eligible precinct, which has turned in its ballot. And that's the city of Dunellen, which had its purchase requirements referendum on the ballot. And for those of you who don't know, the purchase requirements referendum was approved by an overwhelming majority. 80% of people in the only eligible precinct for that one voted yes to approve this referendum. Now, what is the referendum, you may be asking? Well, it amends the city's charter to require that purchases of goods in an amount of over $5,000 but less than $35,000 will require at least 2 written bids or proposals for any one of those goods. So if there were any goods that the city were to be selling off, you need at least 2 bids in order to go above, in order to, have that purchase available. Of course, on items more than $5,000 but less than $35,000. But for goods in excess of $35,000, purchases will not go through until after the city announces it will accept sealed bids for proposals. So the city of Dunellen is now required to advertise the sale of goods in excess of $35 for bids from anyone. But of course, if they are below that $35,000 threshold, then of course all that matters is that it be over $5,000. But most importantly, for those goods that are over $5,000, the city is not necessarily required to advertise those goods. It can, should it want to, but it's not necessary per the referendum. Of course, if the referendum had not been passed, then purchased goods of over $5,000 would have been required to be advertised, and there wouldn't have been a minimum number of bids required to be accepted for those goods to go up for sale. So, of course, it seems like people in the city of Dunedin were overwhelmingly in support of this referendum, and it is now passed, which means that this amendment will now go into effect in the city's charter. Of course, only one eligible precinct. That precinct already turned in its ballots, and it seems like the vote is in. It is yes on the referendum for the purchase requirements goods for the city of Dunedin. Again, I know that might not be something that is effective for all precincts, but nonetheless something that we kept our eye on and are now reporting to you live from the Marion County Supervisor of Elections office. I'm Bernardo Montas, WUFT News.
All Gainesville precincts are now in, and the charter amendment for local public utilities has been a key race this election season. Sowers has been monitoring this race closely all night. He joins us now live in the studio with an update on what Gainesville voters have decided.
This race is the latest chapter in the battle between Gainesville and the DeSantis administration. In September, the GRU Authority filed a complaint against the city requesting the referendum be removed from the ballot. They claim the referendum was in violation of House Bill 1645, which was passed in June of last year. The bill amended the Gainesville Charter to take control of the utility away from the city and give it to the then newly created Authority Board. Now voters have shown overwhelming support to dissolve the DeSantis-controlled board. Polls stand at a staggering 73% for yes, burying the underwhelming 27% for no. 39,000 votes supported the amendment while 14,000 are against. With the yes vote prevailing, litigation is expected to continue. A trial is set to take place over the legality of the referendum on December 19th and 20th. Live in the studio, Sowers, WUFT News.
I'm here with Dr. Matthew Uttermark. So something that I wanted to talk to you about is polarization this election. How do you think that polarization in our political climate is affecting voter turnout this election specifically?
Yeah, that's a good question. It seems like polarization is continuing given the information that we have so far, right? Conservative areas are getting more conservative. Liberal areas seem to be maintaining or getting slightly more liberal. I think tonight in Florida especially, we got a reminder that Florida is increasingly a conservative and a Republican state and is voting as such.
So Kamala Harris launched her campaign only 107 days ago. This kind of combined with the polarization that we're seeing right now, do you think that it makes her chances even more difficult to win?
I don't know if it made it more difficult. In some ways, it might have actually have assisted her a little bit because there are so many voters across the country that are pre-sorted into camps, right? Voters maybe didn't need to learn as much about Kamala Harris to feel comfortable supporting her. So in some ways, polarization might have been a useful metric for her given the circumstances she faced.
A key focus of the Harris-Walz campaign has been surrounded on abortion. You've done work with gender and race. How do you think that this issue resonates for voters?
Well, the best information that we have so far seems to indicate that there are voters who rank this as an important policy position and an issue that they are willing to make voter determinations on. Even though the abortion amendment in Florida failed to reach the 60% threshold tonight, according to current returns, it still achieved support in the upper 50%. And simultaneously, while Florida continues to vote much more conservatively or in favor, and much more conservatively than other states. And this is an indication that there are a non-substantial amount of voters who identify as Republican or conservative, but are willing to and are supportive of pro-choice policies in the state of Florida.
In the grand scheme of the election, how do you believe that gender and race is going to impact voter decision, voter turnout too?
Yeah, that's a good question. Having a woman of color running as one of the nominees for the top of the ticket, we'll know more in a few months when political scientists can get some more granulated data and really analyze it. But the best of our knowledge, it means that gender and race are more salient in voters' determinations of who they are going to vote for. But we don't know quite how that's going to play out until we get maybe some more information after the election.
And lastly, if you had to pick one issue that you think it'll come down to tonight to decide the election, what would you pick and why?
I think given with what the returns we're seeing so far, I think this is an issue related to economy and the inflation and how much items cost right now.
Thank you, Dr. Uttermark.
Thank you.
Results for the United States Senate are continuing to pile in, with 47 seats counted towards the GOP and 36 for the Democratic Party. WUFT's reporter Hayli Balgobin is here with more on the latest.
The Republicans need to win 4 more seats tonight to capture the Senate majority. Currently, they are inching closer, having flipped a seat in West Virginia. Florida's incumbent Senator Rick Scott also won re-election. Senator Rick Scott will head to Washington for a second term. He received over 5 million votes, beating Democratic candidate Debbie McChrystal-Powell. Scott won 55.7% of the vote, winning in major counties like Duval, Hillsborough, and Miami-Dade. Live in the studio, Hayli Balgobin, WUFT News.
We are taking another look at the Electoral College map with the reports from the Associated Press. So now we're seeing in Georgia a temporary lead in blue, but as you know, voters from the west side of the nation are coming in, we're seeing Arizona in blue, which is a key swing state. And it's looking like to be a strong majority. We have 48% of the voters in. Right now, the stance is looking at 112 Electoral College votes for Harris and 198 for Trump, as the Electoral College reports. But we still have a lot of Electoral College votes in California to still come in, so it is definitely still up in the air.
That's right, California and Nevada still haven't voted, but we're going to take another look at another major race as votes continue to be counted in the race for the U.S. House of Representatives. WUFT's Chrystie Blot has the latest on the results.
That's right, the U.S. House race is still ongoing. The last election was in the midst of the 2022 midterm elections when the Republicans gained a narrow advantage to the control of the U.S. House of Representatives. So far, the Republican Party has a healthy lead with 129 seats to the Democrats, 88. In Florida, the race has already decided with a majority of the seats going to the Republicans. Of the 28 seats, 20 went to the Republicans and 8 went to the Democrats. This is the exact same results as the last election during the 2022 midterms. Live in the studio, Chrystie Blot, WUFT News.
As votes are being counted, we'll be taking a look at more on our election results in the final hour of our coverage.
Let's take another look at our election map to see the latest on our key states. We'll be back with our special election coverage on WUFT News. I'm Bianca Smith, and I'm here with Dr. Vincent Adejumo, and we were just talking a little bit about this earlier, but I want you to tell me, what are some issues that we have within the Black community that they want to be addressed this election?
I think the main issue that Black people want addressed this election is, like most of the country, but especially the economy. People are hurting right now, especially in the African American community. And so they're throughout the campaign looking for these candidates to speak specifically to that, as far as what they're going to do, how their policies are going to address the economic situation, especially the economic inequality between African Americans and whites.
And I know you're talking about the economic situation, and when it comes to these two candidates, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, how do you think that they are addressing it, if at all, within their campaigns? Right.
So Kamala, she put out, her campaign put out a platform that spoke about, many people were expecting her to put out something specifically to African Americans, but you have a certain segment of African Americans who felt like she didn't really put out things that were more specific to them as far as their economic needs and expectations. Obviously Donald Trump is Donald Trump, so most people wouldn't expect him to speak specifically to African Americans. But there was a third party candidate in Jill Stein who had reparations on her platform. And now, so you have some in African American black circles who said that, they debated as far as was her reparations program or platform, did it really get specific enough as far as to African Americans who specifically originate in America or are the descendants of slavery in America, or was her reparations program for all black people? So you have that debate that went on, and so as far as how that relates to electoral politics, you had many of black people and especially African Americans who voted for Jill Stein because of reparations being on her platform.
And how has the way the black man has been seen in politics changed over the years?
Well, obviously you had Barack Obama, President Barack Obama. He won re-election twice. But I believe since then, there's, again, I'm commenting more so what I see, especially between online and some of these different social movements. There's still respect there, obviously, but there is a mood kind of, especially among some black male circles, specifically as far as African American men, that their issues, particularly pertaining to economics, is not really being spoken to by either party.
And why do you think that they're not being spoken about?
Well, I mean, because statistically speaking, I mean, we think about the wealth gap. You think about the wealth gap, African Americans, and especially African American men, are still at the bottom of the totem pole as far as the wealth gap is concerned, as far as salary, as far, you hear about statistics as far as African American women being the fastest growing educated group in America, which is true. But some men feel that, that they're not really being spoken to as far as their particular issues, economically speaking. So a lot of these things are spoken about in a lot of, in years past in clandestine spaces, but now has received a lot of attention in different mediums such as podcasts, especially, YouTube shows, that type of thing. So you really start to see a lot of that play a part in electoral politics.
And then this is my last question for
all
you.
that in 3 hours, and there's so much more to come. This is your last live look here at the Alachua County Supervisor of Elections Office.
What has gotten them
Roches,
interested, just like anything else, as far as young people, is just the possibilities, what is possible, between these candidates. Now, I would say that Kamala Harris, as far as the young average black voter, 18 to 25 years old, especially, no matter what gender, has definitely piqued the interest of the young average black voter. So, but then you have some, like I said, who have their particular issues that may feel different. So.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Now we're going to head back on over to Alex.
Welcome back to a special election night edition of WUFT News. Numbers keep pouring in as candidate races and ballot measure results are called across the country. Here we have a look at the live map of the presidential race as a majority of states have announced a winner: Utah, Michigan, Maine, New Hampshire, Virginia, and Nebraska. We now go over to WUFT reporter Natasha Holt, who is live at the Marion County Supervisor of Elections office with an update on Marion County's local races.
Our live coverage here in Marion County this election. We have seen overwhelmingly a strong performance from Republicans in Marion County. Both candidates and voters have had a strong performance. Republican voters in Marion County turned out in droves for early voting, following a national trend to support Republican candidates. And Republican candidates that they chose, just to recap, in the presidential election, Donald Trump was their overwhelming choice. For the U.S. Senate, Senator Rick Scott, and in Congress, Kat Cammack and Mike Waltz were their choices. And in the Florida legislature, they chose 4 Republican state House members and 1 state Senate candidate, all Republicans. So this election has really solidified Marion County as a Republican stronghold in the state. Now we're here at the Marion County Supervisor of Elections. It is quiet because things got done very early here in this Republican county. Ballots started coming in not too long after 7. Things were pretty much wrapped up by 9 p.m. It's a tight ship here in Marion County, and they get done quickly. So that wraps things up for us here tonight with our live coverage. Live in Marion County, Natasha Holt, WUFT News.
Democratic Sheriff candidate Chad Scott's supporters are gathered at his watch party over at Heartwood Soundstage in Gainesville. WUFT reporter Jada Ross is live tracking the race closely. Jada?
I'm still here at the Chad Scott watch party, which has died down a little bit, as you can tell. It's getting a little bit chilly, so I think people are starting to go home. So if you missed it, all the votes are in for Chad Scott's race, and he declared his victory a short while ago. Now, not all the races in the county are closed, but for now, his race was the closest one in the county. Scott won with 62,673 votes, which was 46.96% of votes in the county. That means that Scott won with 0.29% over his opponent, Republican Emery Gainey. We'll let you know if there's an update that comes through, but at the moment it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Chad Scott is your new sheriff for now at the moment, and he's asking that you continue to support him by going to his website and filling out the form there. Live from the Heartwood Soundstage, Jada Ross, WUFT News.
Over in Butler Plaza, supporters for Republican Sheriff candidate Emery Gainey are gathered for his watch party. WUFT's Sarah Hauer is live with an update. Sarah? All right, we are having some technical difficulties, so we are not going to that live shot now, but Florida's Amendment 4, proposing a constitutional right to abortion, has been a heated topic of discussion leading up to today's election. WUFT reporter Radaysha Robinson is live in the studio with an update on the ballot measure.
Yes, this is one of the most contested issues on the ballot tonight, and the vote is close. I have been monitoring this vote as returns keep coming in. Take a look at this. With 57% in favor and 47% opposed, this vote is really close. Amendment 4 is 60% of the votes to pass. If these results hold, Florida will be the first state that held a statewide vote on the right to abortion that failed to pass. Live in the studio, Radaysha Robinson, WUFT.
I am joined again by Dr. Nathan Carpenter. So explain to me what we are looking at right now.
Absolutely. So this is one of our tools called TalkWalker that we use right now in the Atlas Lab. And what we had set up is a whole bunch of analyses on the candidates running. And so what we do is we put in keyword terms based on their names. So that way, like if you were posting to X or if you were posting to Reddit or another social media platform of your choice, we'll be able to go in and find those based on the keywords that you're using. And so in this case, we have Harris, Trump, Walz, and Vance as the presidential and vice presidential candidates. And we're looking for posts that only contain their names and not the names of their opponents. So that way we can get a better measure of how people are talking about those candidates. And so one of the things that we're seeing over the past week, which again might lead to some insights about the overall performance here, is what we call, again, sentiment analysis, something that I've talked about a few times tonight. And what's interesting is we look at things like the relationship between the positive and the negative conversations. And this is across, again, a huge swath of social media platforms. And so what's very interesting is like right now we're seeing that while Trump has better net sentiment than Harris does over the past week, he also has the most negative sentiment. And what that means to us is a couple of things. One is that the context in which people are talking about Trump, they could be supporting him, but what they could be doing in that case is also maybe attacking others or talking about policy that tends to have negative connotations, right? So there's lots of reasons we might see that showing up there. It doesn't necessarily indicate a win or it doesn't indicate a loss, but it indicates the kinds of conversations that are being had.
So looking at this social media analysis, is there any event that stands out to you over the past few months that has garnered a specific amount of positive or negative reactions?
Absolutely. So if we look at the past 6 months, some of the most interesting ones, of course, are back in July, like the attempted assassination of Trump. We can even see that pretty explicitly right here. And we see a lot of negative sentiment during that moment, but that is not there because people were like attacking him or something. It's purely the context, right? Like the word, shot or shooting, right, shows up in a very negative way. So we see that show up really explosively on the screen. Other places, though, we see some very interesting things are when Kamala Harris first stepped into the race and replaced Joe Biden as the Democratic or presumptive Democratic nominee at that time. And we can actually see one of those few moments, not only the differences in terms of overall volume, she actually outpaced Trump for several days in terms of that attention, but also drastic improvements of that net sentiment.
So a major thing in social media recently was at a Donald Trump rally when a comedian compared Puerto Rico to garbage. Looking at this social media analysis, what were you seeing? What was the sentiment there? And do you think it impacted the election or voter turnout?
I think it may have. The question will be how much and how far will that go? And so actually one of the things that I can do in that case is we can do a quick filter here if we have time live, just to see like again, that word garbage coming up, right? Does it show up in any capacities to kind of give us a sense of additional context? Looks like we won't be able to really, oh, there we go. So I'll go ahead and type that in. We'll see if we see that spiking on screen here. So especially if we take a look at the past 7 days, right, when that moment came up. Let's see. So the word garbage, yep, right there. We can see that tremendous spike, if you can see that on screen, right? That is that moment, and we can see exactly that. There's a big change in sentiment, right? So big drop off. So yes, that absolutely can matter. But again, that question that is there is, does that change turnout or not? It's a sticky issue. Again, it's something that we can see lasting several days, but does it last all the way up until the moment that people actually put their ballots in the box? That's what we don't know yet.
And I want to ask one final question. We're seeing the rise in artificial intelligence. Do you think that deepfakes in any way or just AI information in general impacted the election at all?
So we did see some moments where manipulated content came out, but I don't think we saw it in the way that we were worried about it. We saw things like early on in the race, there were some doctored images and videos suggesting that Taylor Swift endorsed Trump. That was way back in August. But we didn't see, again, the deep fakes to the level that we thought were going to be pure lies or pure content meant to disinform. I think all the classic types of disinformation are things that have been really truly problematic. And some of those that even go beyond social media, like we've heard a lot about tonight and that we're seeing out there, were at least 32 bomb threats directed at Fulton County, or at least, I could be wrong on the county, but in counties in Georgia that are coming from, again, those that are seeking to disrupt the elections. So I think those can sometimes matter way more than, again, something that we might worry about being a meme or some sort of disinformation being passed around.
Thank you for your insight, Dr. Carpenter.
Thank you.
Incumbent Senator Rick Scott appears to have capitalized on a close lead over Debbie Mucarsel-Powell leading up to Election Day. Alexis Vivanco joins us live in the studio tracking Florida's U.S. Senate results.
Thanks, Bianca. And yes, the votes are in for the Florida Senate seat, and it appears we do have a winner. The Associated Press has called this race, and incumbent Senator Rick Scott will be going back to Washington to represent the state of Florida. Take a look on your screens. Governor Scott earned about 55.7% of the vote. Democratic challenger Debbie Mucarsel-Powell was not propelled by traditionally strong blue counties. Voting maps revealed Mucarsel-Powell's support lagged around Tampa, the Orlando suburbs, and Miami-Dade County. Alachua County is supporting Mucarsel-Powell with 60% of that vote.
We want to take you to Mara Roches now, who is live in Alachua County Supervisor of Elections Office with the latest on voter turnout.
Let's keep talking about swing states. If there's one common theme, it's that anything can happen at any second of this election.
For example, 2 hours ago, I stood here, and Vice President Kamala Harris took a 72% lead in the vote in Pennsylvania. An hour later, that vote went down to 56%. And another hour later, which is right now, former President Donald Trump now leads the vote in Pennsylvania at a 51%. All in the matter of 3 hours. And there's still more to come. But for now, this is your last live look at the Alachua County Supervisor of Elections office. Roches, WUFT News.
The fight for control over the House of Representatives is still happening all over the country. Let's get back to WUFT's Madison Ginsberg live in the studio with more on this key race tonight.
That's right, Alex. We told you earlier tonight all of Florida's congressional district votes have been counted. And according to the Associated Press, all 28 congressional races in the state have been called. 20 of the congressional candidates in Florida are Republican, leaving 8 to the Democrats. Here in North Central Florida, incumbent Kat Cammack beat Democratic candidate Tom Wells. Cammack earned 62% of the vote over perennial candidate Tom Wells. I will continue to monitor other key races across the country as the race for the final House majority continues. Reporting live in studio, Madison Ginsberg, WUFT News.
Let's turn to WUFT reporter Jessica Nitty, who is live at Heartwood Soundstage in Gainesville for a local Democratic watch party. Jessica?
I'm here live at the Democratic Watch Party here in Alachua County. Most of the local races are coming to an end. Democrats did make a good showing here in Alachua County. They have won or are close to winning a lot of the key races here in the county. But it's not all over just yet. Many are still here watching the race go down. Just right behind me, Trump 207 electoral votes, Kamala at 91. Big number for Trump, but the night is still young. People are still here waiting for these last results to roll in. We'll keep you updated. Live in Gainesville, WUFT News.
Florida has wrapped much of the races for the night. Let's take a look at the results from some of the key measures locally and around the state. Florida Senator Rick Scott will keep his Senate seat after defeating Democratic challenger Debbie Murkowski-Powell. Senator Scott received nearly 55% of the vote with close to 6 million votes, surpassing his challenger by more than 1 million votes. Many political analysts believe Scott's seat was vulnerable to the Democrats. Back to Florida with those two critical ballot amendments, marijuana and abortion. Right now, Amendment 3, which calls for the legal adult use of marijuana, has voter approval of 55% with more than 5 million votes. Amendment 4, which addresses abortion, has rights by a 57% approval rating with nearly 6,000 votes. In order to pass both measures, both amendments need at least 60% approval.
Now the races aren't over because the race for the White House is going to continue overnight. As votes continue to be counted, you can count on us, WUFT and WRUF, to bring you the latest when a winner is decided.
Before we go, let's take one last check on the projected winners for some of the states. This is a look at the map as the polls have closed in most states. Former President Donald Trump most recently won Kansas and Iowa, while Harris's most recent win was in the District of Columbia. Trump is currently leading with a 210 electoral vote lead, but campaigns are now turning their eyes to the crucial states of Pennsylvania and Michigan. Harris will expect to pick up 54 votes in California, and she will hope to win the swing states of Arizona and Nevada.
Millions of Americans are not the only ones eagerly awaiting the results of the presidential elections. Countries across the globe are tuning in, knowing the world's commander-in-chief could play a part in their country's politics future. WUFT's Caitlin Schiffer is in Ireland and spoke to students about their feelings towards the U.S. political landscape.
The eyes of the world are on the United States, while millions wait for the announcement of the 47th President of the United States. Young Irish students over 4,000 miles away are among those keeping a close eye on the race.
American politics definitely is its own brand of entertainment, like partially due to like the size of the country and their kind of the makeup of their political system, where it's very much one party takes all. It's very divided.
As Ireland is expecting a snap election in the upcoming weeks, many students say the U.S. election is even more important to them.
When an election like America's comes around, like it's so overly relevant to Irish people just through media that, to me personally, I would say that the American, like I'd know more about it, and so it'd have more of an impact on me personally.
At Dublin College University in Ireland, 30 students gathered to discuss the upcoming U.S. election and how they believe it will impact them.
Policy areas which I think will affect Europeans and specifically Irish people, being corporation tax rates and how they differ between the two candidates and their differing stances on the defense of Ukraine.
Climate change, reproductive rights, and the impact on Ireland's economy were among the topics that most concern these students.
Well, I'm nervous on the behalf of all of the women in America who are probably losing sleep over the fact that their rights might be taken away from them.
These students believe whoever is the next president will impact other countries' politics as well as their own. As the next U.S. president-elect remains unknown, what is known is these Irish students will be paying close attention to the elected winner. In Ireland, Caitlin Schiffer, WUFT News.
I am back here with Dr. Rachel Grant. So in 2020, there was a shift in Latinx voting trends. We saw a lot turning to President Trump and backing him. Why do you think that he appeals to this group? And how do you anticipate that this voting bloc will vote in this election?
Well, I think we've heard a lot of interesting commentary, whether it's from Trump or other individuals talking about individuals from the Caribbean or Latin American descent. And I think those commentaries, especially in the last few weeks, have been really influential about how we talk about our understanding around Latin America. I think also we are also keenly aware of the issues of immigration, and especially in terms of how that reflects our understanding of border control as well. So I think we will see either the same trends, possibly there'll be some differing understandings around certain identities and how people identify themselves. But I think we'll probably see some of those same trends in the same way.
I was speaking to Dr. Carpenter, and we were talking about how at a recent Donald Trump rally, a comedian compared Puerto Rico to garbage.
Yes.
Do you think that statement could impact Puerto Rican voter turnout or people of Puerto Rican descent and how they vote in this election?
Well, I think, again, like the big aspect about social media is you have these sound bites, and those sound bites can be taken so out of context, so out of many viewpoints. I will say, probably after that comment, that comedian making those jokes, we did see individuals like Mark Anthony, Bad Bunny, people who represent or come from those areas really, start to endorse Harris and openly endorse. And so the idea that we have in this election so many celebrities, so many pop culture icons coming forth, showing that how they identify and what their ideas are, shows that we are more keen to listen to people we identify with even more maybe than politicians in some cases.
Thank you, Dr. Grant.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining us for this special edition of WUFT News. We will bring you the results as they are released tomorrow on WUFT Midday and WUFT First at 5. But your North Central Florida news, election news, is always on WUFT.org and all of our social media platforms. Have a good night.